Hello and welcome back to the Comics Matter podcast. I'm your host, Jesse, and with me today is my good friend and our special guest for today, Brett Downard. How are you, Brett?
Doing pretty good.
Brett, what is the last comic you read? I'm assuming today.
Today, Kiss Psycho Circus number 31, the last one of the run.
Do you? I saw that. Okay, so for everybody who doesn't know, I'm going to explain this real fast. Me and Brett met through a comic book group on Facebook called Comic Lovers. Really nice group, really good people in the group. I think I have somehow been in the graces enough to become a moderator on there for some reason, but yeah, it's really good people. And Brett, I saw that you posted that you got these comics, the Kiss comics. Do you have all of the Kiss comics, or is this just a specific series?
Just that series right now. I like the band well enough, but I don't know. I know that Kiss Psycho Circus, the album, because I grew up with that one.
Yeah.
And Spawn was like the first book I got into because I could get number one. So it was Todd McFarlane produced that book, and I like the style of art and stuff. The stories are pretty good. I mean, it's not the greatest thing, but they're fun.
It's one of those things where like Kiss is one of those groups, and I feel like there's a few like celebrities or series where they just get the weirdest situations in comics. I think currently Mars Attacks is one of those where Mars attacks literally everything currently in comics.
No, they did that back in when the movie came out or right after, because Topps had them.
Yeah.
They did a bunch, well, Topps and Image, I think.
Yeah, now currently Dynamite's doing them. I think currently it's Mars Attacks Red Sonja, and I was like, how does that even work? And but it's comic books, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's fun.
Yeah, and it's John Layman, so he writes fun books. Brett, so you listen to the show regularly, so you kind of know the format of everything. So let's drill all the way back to like, where was your first comic? What was the first comic you got and read?
I don't know the first. I mean, I remember my dad going through what he had left because his mother, he went to college and she sold it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a lot of Silver Age DC, Batman and stuff. But there was a Batman one. It was, the case files of Batman. So it was some reprint stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I was too young and I couldn't read, but flipping through it, and my dad liked comics, my brother, we all got into it. But when I really got into it was probably Spawn number one, because I could start at issue one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'd go to the one bookstore that was next to my grandmother's hair place, and it was just a grocery bag full of books that were beat up.
Yeah.
And we'd pick out a few, but I never really read them. I just looked through them.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I read them, I was probably more confused. It was halfway through stories and stuff. But so probably Spawn and the Image stuff, kind of, because I could get on that, and then the X-Men, was the cartoon.
Yeah. With Spawn, was that early 90s or is that late 90s? I never can remember.
Early 1992.
Okay. And were you like going to the comic book store regularly trying to pick up every issue of Spawn?
Whenever I could get up to the shop, because it was a little bit of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I could ride my bike kind of. It wasn't until I think 95 the shop opened up that was closer to me. That was like my home store.
Yeah.
That I kind of lived at one point because I played Magic the Gathering and everything there. I mean, me and my buddies, we'd skip out of tech school.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner was on the school board. He's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "We're making you money."
And with Spawn number one, was that the start of you collecting, or did you like not really catch the collecting bug until later?
That was probably when I caught the bug, is just seeing more continuity, like thing happen. Even in Wildcats, I remember a random person gets shot in the knee or something in one issue, and then like 10 issues later, they reveal it was somebody that's gonna be after the Wildcats, and they're like, my knees never felt the same. Like stupid little. There was the Morbius comic. He bit somebody, and then it became his son.
Yeah.
And it like blew my young child mind. I was like, what? This can all connect?
It's so wild to see like how quickly too like a collection can start building when you're buying series and you start finding new connections and stories that you love. People can't will not see this really because it will be an audio thing, but Brett probably has the second largest collection that I know someone personally has, because I know Bob. We both know Bob, and he literally has the Guinness World Record for a personal collection.
Yeah, he'll post crazy stuff and ask me if I have it. I'm like, no, I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you literally have the second biggest collection I've ever seen of just books everywhere.
Maybe. I mean, I know there's people I've seen posts online that have more, but I don't know. I mean, I've only read half of them so far. It's a never-ending battle.
Yeah, no, I'm starting to face the same thing where I'm like, I want to collect this series, but I don't want to read them until I have them all. But then I
Yeah,
just
that's
never
kind
get
of
them all.
yeah, that's kind of what I try to do, more or less.
How do you live with such a collection? Do you find yourself like spending afternoons just going through it and organizing it and losing yourself for a while?
Sometimes, I mean, usually cataloging, usually watching TV
Yeah.
shows and stuff, bagging and boarding. Usually once a year, I integrate all the new stuff into the collection, and that's usually like a 2 or 3 day process
Hmm.
of rotating everything. And I mean, it could be shorter, but I look through stuff and see it and shiny objects.
Yeah,
So
no, that when I had to reorganize my entire collection last year, I think I caught myself so many times just stopping and reading like a series. And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't have enough time. I need to get through this.
I mean, even before I started, I collected like the X-Men, and I waited until I got a few. But I
Mhm.
would look at the covers and just see, oh, they did the lettering in the back of the X yellow and this one's blue, and just studying them almost until I had enough. And then I started to read them. Then you get the cliff notes or
Yeah,
it's read this. Oh, now I got to find that.
yeah, and I always, and that's what I love about the group so much, like especially like you and Patrick and Raul will always post these series that I just never heard of because you guys are older than me. So you guys will post something, and I'll be like, oh, that sounds right up my alley. Let me see when there's next comic sales. Let me write this down so I can see if I can grab as many as I can.
Well, and that's funny because I mean you're younger, and the younger people post different things. Like I'll get in a rut. And there's a lot of new writers and stuff. I can't remember their names or
Hmm.
whatnot because I'm used to all the people I grew up with. But I get in this stuff and I try. Sometimes I got to put blinders on because there's
Yeah.
so much out there. It's like, okay, maybe get that later. Focused on the stuff you get.
Yeah, I want to say it was because of one of your posts is the reason I started collecting the Demathis Doctor Fate, and I'm waiting until I have all of those until I read through those.
Yeah, I haven't read those yet, but anything to Mathis.
Yeah, there's also a Spectre series I think one someone posted that I want to
Oh,
grab.
yeah. I,
Yeah,
I I read those. Those are excellent.
yeah. It's just there's a lot of '90s books I think people kind of forget about that are still really good, and people kind of think of the popcorn books in the '90s more than anything.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, I've been around a little bit, so I've seen the ebbs and flow, and I've seen like, oh, this is big, and then like nowadays, like barely no one remembers it. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That was huge back then.
Hmm.
But I
It
mean,
it's like the Grant Morrison GLA. I feel like if you talk to any like new comic fan, unless they already just kind of know Grant Morrison, no one knows what that's about.
yeah, I mean,
No one talk about it. But that thing literally changed the entire comic book history by that
yeah.
having that book.
No, I have a poster hanging on my filing cabinet, and it's at
Yeah,
one point it'll be on the spinner rack again, the
yeah.
first issue.
So the main focus of the show, of course, and always the topic that is the main topic is what is some of the most important books to you and why?
Um, Probably stuff from the '90s, the X-Men. I love the complex continuity, but Age of Apocalypse is probably one of my favorites. Um, the one I brought to talk about mainly today was Onslaught,
Hmm.
to maybe defend it. I don't know. I mean, it has its ups and downs. I mean, I tend to, even when I reread things, I can put my child glasses back on and still enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can sit back and look at things technically and be like, yeah, that's not right. But I try to just think of the positive when I reread things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think a lot of good stuff came from Onslaught.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if. I mean, I guess the common thought is Onslaught wasn't that good.
Well,
But
what exactly was the plot of Onslaught? Because when it comes to X-Men, my knowledge is so little because it's so vast.
it is. It's mainly in X-Men 25. Professor Xavier, he mind wipes Magneto, and part of Magneto's evil came into Professor Xavier, and they mingled together and created Onslaught.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to take over the world. He did the restart or started a Sentinel program that was in the works. I think it was Wide Awake, it was called.
Yeah.
So it had Sentinels come out. So yeah, I can't remember. He just wanted to take over and rule. I mean, pretty generic. But to me, like some things nowadays, though, Realm of the King and stuff, they have miniseries instead of interrupting the titles,
Mm-hmm.
which is cool if you're reading the titles. But the event doesn't seem as urgent.
Yeah.
Like Onslaught, it tied in with like everything across the board. I think Ghost Rider was one of the few that it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
A handful of others, but so it seemed more important in a way. Yeah. But out of this, you had Thunderbolts, which I haven't read the whole run, but what I've read, and I mean, it seems universally loved.
Yeah, and like that whole line of Thunderbolts has stuck around for so long.
Yeah. And then I even love the Heroes Reborn.
Mm-hmm.
Because the image art and stuff. And granted, the stories aren't as good and stuff, but that was, again, another issue 1 that I could get.
Yeah.
So through the X-Men, it led me into start getting the Avengers and Iron Man, Cap. And then after that, you had Heroes Return.
Yeah, and that led to the Busiek Avengers, right? And so, like...
That's my quintessential Avengers team.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we'll ever get that again, but that's fine. We can keep, I mean, I wouldn't want to redo the same thing.
Yeah, and even Busiek himself said, like, I think recently people were asking questions about, like, I did too much in that Avengers run. That was too much for one writer to try to pull off. But it's like, he did the best anybody could probably do.
Yeah, no. That was, I mean, you had Wade coming back on Captain America. Brewski was also doing Iron Man.
And
Thor, Dan Jurgens.
Dan Jurgens, I was about to say, and wasn't it Romita Jr. doing the art?
No, it was Chen I can't remember his name.
I just remember people talking about that Thor that was very much like back to the now I can't remember the old Thor writer's name that's so famous. Simonson. Yeah, the Simonson type of Thor where it's more godlike and Asgardian and focused on that a bit.
Yeah, I read like from issue 25 of that almost to the end with Dan Jurgens. I really enjoyed that. I still have to read like the first part of that.
So what's the thing about Onslaught though as a story in itself, other than not what it really leads to, but what story about itself that you keep coming back to and you focus
on? It just everything, how it builds up and everything. Like I said, it crosses over everything. I mean, there's a part where Cable issue 37, 38 maybe, could be wrong. Where he has to use his psychic powers outside of himself, and it's weakening him, so the techno-organic virus is taking a hold of him. And, I mean, I was probably 15, 16 when it came out. So it was like, well, could this be the end of him? I wasn't jaded.
Yeah. So. And like that whole thing, like the idea of being jaded with like a character death, and especially now, I feel like everybody's definitely jaded. Like the X-Men kind of make fun of it in some ways now because of how they can bring people back. But I'm trying to remember what my first character death was, and I think
you said Blue Beetle in the one.
Oh yeah, the first episode, I think like that was the first real big death for me was Blue Beetle and Countdown to Infinite Crisis, and then you read Infinite Crisis, and then all of those deaths because they didn't pull a lot of punches. They killed a lot of characters off. They killed off like the entire Freedom Fighters in like the first issue, I think.
Yes, I'm like,
Yeah, and so it's like at the time those deaths feel so impactful and important. But I think that's why they kind of stopped killing people off in big crossovers nowadays because it doesn't matter anymore.
yeah, I just try to take each story or each era
Yeah.
as it is and just take it for what it is. I mean, I fanboyed. I quit getting Amazing Spider-Man for a couple months when they brought back Dr. Octopus.
Yeah.
Because the hand brought, I was like, well, the hand can bring everybody back. I'm mad. But
Yeah.
now I don't care. As long as it's a good story and I like the art.
Yeah. And that's really what it comes down to is a good story. Is the story trying to tell something new? Hopefully, is it trying to build the world better in that comic book world, right? Um, Sometimes the story doesn't have to do that, but I always hope that a new comic book story is trying to make comics more accessible for everybody.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's very hard.
I find trying to get into some things that I'm not into, it's like, oh, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I should be good at this, but it's some of the things. That's why I love comics. There's so much.
Yeah.
It's like a giant puzzle. I mean, I know a good bit of stuff, but there's a ton I either forgot or just haven't read or don't know.
Yeah. When it comes to comics, is there any comic book in particular that because I know we talked about Onslaught, but is there any comic book that you feel like changed how you see things in the world, or kind of like there has a special human connection to you through comics in any way?
Hmm. Trying to think. Um, Obviously, there's been ones just purchased
Yeah.
or given for special moment. I know you kind of asked that question. I should have thought about it more. I
Oh, it's
didn't.
okay.
I flipped through the Onslaught. I have the trades. I flipped through them real quick, and I was like, I know it enough to talk about it. Good enough. Um, Trying to look around the room to see some stuff. Um, I don't know. Probably the most important comic right now to me probably will be for the rest of my life. Um, there's a Green Lantern trade
Mm-hmm.
that I have. It's not the essentials, the showcase
Yeah.
um, that my brother gave me, and I have his collection too because he recently passed. But he had the hardback too because he got that one, so he gave me the softback.
Yeah.
Um, and I read it in a couple days and realized at first I thought it was going to be cheesy because Silver Age. It does have that, but there's so much world building in it
Yeah.
that it was so good. And that trade, the hardback, was the last thing my brother read.
Yeah.
So that's probably the most important comic.
And that I know you posted a lot about talking about your brother's passing and like getting the collection and kind of integrating it into yours. And that's something that I always want to focus on in the show sometimes, but it doesn't always come up because it's not always a thing in people's lives. But there's something cathartic about comics in some ways where when a tragedy happens, they're an easy way to help cope or kind of compartmentalize how you're feeling at the time. And I don't know if that helped you at all, how like getting your brother's collection and like seeing it all together and seeing what he would love and what he was enjoying and kind of how it compared to you and how it matched your stuff.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I even have a room in the basement I set up with his stuff because he collected video games
Mm-hmm.
and he had more trades and single issues probably. So there's that in the room, all the video games system set up. He had movies that integrated, so it's kind of like having a part of him still
Yeah.
with me. Um, I haven't. I went through all the books. I haven't started a catalog. I think I've been hesitating
Yeah, for sure.
Procrastinating, finding other things to do, but it is. I mean, there's memories. There's a lot of books that we had doubles because we had similar interest.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I just wish I could like put my finger on it, but I know for myself, whenever like a really bad depressive episode comes along or something just awful happened during my week or something, I will find just a close comic and just start reading it or something to just kind of breathe. It like gives me space to like calm down and go through it all. And I think that's one of the coolest things about the medium, because TV, I feel like, stresses me out if I'm trying to do that while I'm feeling like that. I feel like video games also do it. Music doesn't really help, but just reading these adventures or these characters living their lives helps me refocus in.
Yeah, I think one of the things is it's at your own pace.
Yeah.
Like, I still have the last volume of Walking Dead to read, the compendium, but I kind of gave up on the show because it moves so slow. But the book, I'm like, oh, give me more. I try to read it so fast.
Yeah.
So good. When all the stuff from my brother was going down, I went back and revisited the Max.
Mm-hmm.
I know he read some of the issues, but we watched the show together.
Yeah.
So it was kind of connecting. I reread Bone because that was another thing in the early 2000s that I read, and it was good memories of me and him.
When it comes to your collection and stuff, is that when you're building your collection, what is your main, in like you personally, what's your main drive for your collection? Because for me, it really is just the love of the books, and I don't know what I'm ever going to do with the collection. I know I'm going to read them all, and I'm going to reread a bunch of them because I do that anyways, but like I have no plans. I like, my brain's not, oh, you're going to leave this for your kids so they have a nice nest egg, but my brain is like, no, I don't want them to ever sell these books. I want them to keep them if they're going to have them, or just lock them in a room and let them collect dust.
Yeah, when people find out about my collection at first, like that's not a comic book person, they're like, well, why don't you sell them? How much could you get? Well, it doesn't matter. Even if I'd have as most money that I could get for them, what would I want to do with the money? I'd want to buy more comics.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the question? I got lost.
I was just like, well, what do you feel like is your main drive when you're collecting? Like, are you collecting just because you love the books so much, or is it just to share them with people? Like, what's the collecting for?
I think it's like a giant puzzle to get all the pieces. Like I'm more of a Marvel person, but I mean I love all comics. So like DC after Crisis on Infinite Earth, that's kind of my era until the New 52. That's like the stuff I want to collect more or know more. I'm definitely a collector, obviously, but I always try to say I'm a comic reader.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to just hoard them. I want to actually read them. It's just so much easier to buy them. You can buy them faster than you can read them. I mean, that's a problem in the comic community.
Yeah, I agree. When you buy trades, do you ever buy trades of comics you already have?
It's usually crossovers.
Gotcha.
Stuff. So, I mean, my collection's very organized, so I can pull the stuff out, but it's so much nicer to have it. Or if it's full runs of something, was Why the Last Man, I have them all in trade, but I have the whole series.
Yeah, I always double up on trades because I feel like, I can just lend out trades. But I don't want to lend out my single issues.
Yeah.
But that's always the fun thing, is like trying to get people into comics. Like currently, I think my whole run of Multiversity is with Steven, who does the logo for the show. It's all with him because he's like, if I want to read comics, I want to read something that's not within the main universe. I'm like, here, read Multiversity. But I know, like, those are my single issues. I don't have the trade, so hopefully he gives them back.
Yeah, I mean, I'll lend the stuff up for people I trust, and I try to get people into it. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes they're just not that into it.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, you just want, it's such a good hobby. All right. It's an expensive hobby, and it's a little bit addictive. It's kind of like tattoos. But, like, it's a good hobby in the sense of, like, it's a good way to have a community. It's a good way to, like, converse and join together on one common topic. And I feel like it's a bit easier or a bit more fun to do that than with like TV and such because it's so vast.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize how many different types of books are out there, and they still make how many.
Yeah.
You said about tattoos. That's the reason why my whatever I'm reading, that's usually like my favorite thing at the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I'd get. I'd just keep on getting them.
Yeah, that's honestly becomes my issue. Is like I have like all-time favorites, but when it comes to like someone's like, "What's your favorite?" Insert blank, because I think we had someone new at my job, and they're like, "What's your favorite anime?" I'm like, "Oh, the last one I just watched that I really enjoyed." Like I don't have it. It's kind of the same way with comics. If anybody asks me what's my favorite comic right now, I'm like, "Strange Adventures," because I just read the last issue. Yeah, it's kind of how that burns in.
Yeah, my go-to is usually like Spider-Man.
Yeah,
and I love Spider-Man, but like if I think about it more, I like the Stanley Silver Surfer.
Yeah. So yeah, like that's the thing that I love talking about like with you guys online about. It's just like, what are we reading right now? What are we digging into? What can you help me discover and find more of? And like whenever one of your guys' favorite old characters or my favorite new character meet up, like I think in that new future state stuff, Hitman's coming back. And or Vigilante's coming back, and I'm like, oh, these are characters that like just haven't been around. Let's bring them back. Let's do something with them.
Yeah, I mean Hitman. I read that I think last year.
Yeah,
I mean it's Garth Ennis. You wouldn't think, but I mean I would think, brotherly love or caring is the thing to take away from that book about a hitman.
Yeah.
I've been reading Flash. I mean that's one of my favorite characters, and it's currently what I'm reading. So,
and that's like the best thing right now is because I've read all those Flashes. So now when you post something, I'm like, oh, I've actually read this and I can talk about it now because the Wally West Flash is one of my first like characters that I read the entire run of.
Yeah, see, I fell in love with him with the JLA.
Yeah.
Before anything else, and I read a few issues here and there, Strays, and I read a few of the John's issues before, and like the Wade when he comes back at the end, I read it.
Yeah. What's your current run that you're trying to complete?
Avengers.
Like just in like which exactly which run of Avengers?
Volume 1.
Volume. So the entirety of volume. That's some expensive books, aren't they?
We're at the expensive books.
Oh, okay.
Need 1, 2, 4. The first Vision. I think I need 11 more.
It's like hearing Bob like saying like he only has like 3 Fantastic Fours or something left. I'm like, how do you only have like under 10 issues of Fantastic Four left to collect?
I mean, well, those get pricey. I don't know if I'll ever have that complete. I think I might have to get the first 40 or so in trade. Same with Amazing.
Yeah, I think my thing is to collect. I want to say it's volume 2 or I think it's volume 3 actually of Green Lantern, the
90s.
The 90s one where the Hal starts off and then he slowly turns to Parallax, and then by issue 50 it goes to Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the Kyle stuff is what I read in high school. I got those through the library, but I kind of just want to read all the way through.
Yeah, Kyle's my Green Lantern too.
Yeah, it's Kyle and Wally are definitely my 2 go-tos, but I never attached myself to Connor. It's always been Ollie when it comes to Green Arrows.
You see, I like Connor.
I like him, but it's never been like the one I see, like I relate to the most for some reason, even though he is definitely like the person I should relate to the most. Yeah. I always go to Ollie for some reason. And I think maybe it's because I read Quiver before I read anything really with Connor.
See, I read he was in JLA too.
Yeah.
And he was trying out or whatever. So that was, and then I read Mike Grow run.
Yeah.
With the Longbow Hunters and stuff. So, yeah, I like them both a lot. But.
So I got a few really deep nerd-like questions for our Q&A section. And the first one I have is, if they do another DC Marvel crossover, which I know Donny Cates really wants to do and a few other new writers really want to do, who do you want to see as the big villain of that? Because last time we had Game Master, and who was the other guy?
Yeah, with JLA and Avengers.
The Busick one. Who would you want to see as the new big crossover villain?
I mean, everybody would probably say Thanos, but that's just because, I mean, that's probably who it might be, or because everybody knows who it is. I don't know. I'd probably like to see someone that was good kind of turn.
I feel like it would be like Reed Richards, like breaking through a dimensional thing.
Well, you have the Maker.
Yeah.
He's already the evil version.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I really was digging the Ghost Rider, and I like the Doctor Strange Damnation story. Mm-hmm. So maybe Mephisto.
Okay, yeah, I guess, and teaming up with I know there's some Satan character in DC. I just don't know who it is.
Metron or whatever.
Yeah, I can see them teaming up to raise a little hell.
I don't think he's been around since the 90s.
Yeah, and the Grant Morrison stuff, right? Because I think he used him. I think he sent the JLA to hell in one arc, or maybe it was just another miniseries.
Well, no. Well, Wade created him. He used him in the Underworld Unleashed, where he.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
And then Wade used him in the Flash.
Yeah.
I just read that not that long ago.
And is there any like old school 90s or like 80s character that you would like to see make a comeback that just hasn't been around for forever?
Star Fox. He'd have to be less creepy, because now in his adult thinking what he does, it's not right.
Yeah, especially the stuff he did with Carol was a bit weird and bad.
He was like one of my C-list favorite characters. It's like no one liked him. I was like, he's cool.
Yeah.
He can do whatever he wants.
And do you have a comic that's like your guilty pleasure comic that you're like, no, like not Onslaught. We're not going to talk about Onslaught, but like, that everybody just considers like mediocre or bad, but you're like, yeah, no, this is really good, and I like going back to it.
There's it's not good. Jaguar God. Mm-hmm. It's from Danzig, from the one band, and it has his villain comes back or whatever, and he has Skull Fist. And he's like, look at me and my new skull. It's so cheesy, but it has Liam Sharp art.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's worth it alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's so cheesy. I mean, you can read them in 2 minutes, but nothing happens in them, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably one that is not well revered.
And lastly, I'm gonna open up to you, because you've listened to basically almost every episode of the show. Do you have any questions you ever want to ask me? Because like I don't ever get asked questions because I'm the host, but this is something where it's like this is me and you as friends talking. So like, is there anything comic wise you ever wanted to ask me about?
Did you ever think about well, I know you wrote fan fiction, or have you ever tried or wanted to self-release a book?
I've done 2 short story collections back in like 2016 and 2017, I think. It's been a while. And those are all horror based. But when it comes to comics, I originally, and I'm not going to probably ever use this, so I will tell you the pitch. Back when I was like trying to figure out how to write a script, I had an idea of a guy who's basically had to be always morally good, because if he didn't, the instant he wasn't, he was sent straight to hell. But the basic premise is that like trying to be morally good all the time will break you and break your psyche and stuff. So like having all these right and wrong decisions where there's so much gray area is so difficult to navigate towards. But I realized that concept was way too hard for me to write. I
was gonna say, yeah, that sounds crazy hard.
It's so much easier to come up with pitches for characters that already exist than for my own stuff, it feels like.
Yeah, I've never thought about trying to really write superhero stuff. It's more just human drama.
Yeah. I mean, when it's not like comic books, when it's not scripts, I can write short stories just fine. But when it's trying to write scripts, and like, I can only visualize the capes. I can't visualize the independent stuff that well for some reason. I always had this one pitch back when Dick Grayson had his identity revealed during Forever Evil and Grayson and stuff. And when he came back for Rebirth, I was like, okay, Dick Grayson has his identity back. This is what the first storyline should be. But I couldn't pitch it because I have no credit with DC. I couldn't pitch it to them. But I'm like, the first storyline should be him trying to like reconnect with Barbara and like talking about how it's great to be back in the city. It's great to have his identity back. No one knows who he is anymore except for the people he cares about. And when he's talking to Barbara in their apartment, someone shoots him, which, funny enough, Tom King does later on, but for a different reason. But someone shoots him, and someone still knows who he is, and that's James Jr. So it would be Dick and Barbara trying to go after James Jr. and dealing with their relationship as they're dealing with him, and her and his relationship. But I like it's a bit too far along in Dick Grayson's lifespan now to do that again.
I mean, you could always do Elseworld or something.
Yeah. But yeah, I would love to write comics at some point. That's the end goal one day, hopefully.
I mean, I always thought about it, but I don't think like the X-Men, they're probably my favorite like team or group. But I don't think I could write it. I'd rather just be looking from the outside, seeing what others are doing.
Yeah, if anything, I would I want someone to invite me to one of those writer summits that they do for both companies and just sit me down and let me listen to them pitch. Because there's so many pitchers I know that don't make it past those summits. I'm so curious to see what the throw it at the wall and see if it sticks kind of pitches are in there.
Oh yeah, there's tons. Because they do, well, I don't know if they still do. Do they break it up into groups still?
I want to say
the Bat family of books, the Super family.
I don't know if DC does. I know last time when they were starting the X-Men stuff, Hickman was like, okay, who wants to be in on the X-Men stuff? And like they started pitching X-Men stuff specifically.
Yeah, that's pretty much off on its world. Its own. I mean,
yeah, it's very little connected unless you talk about like the Chip stuff.
Yeah, what they did the X-Men Empire.
Yeah,
that's probably one of my favorite stories of the year.
And now they're gonna do King in Black, and that's gonna have X-Men stuff involved because Sword's gonna be involved in that.
I'm just getting very little of that. There's too much. And I didn't get all the Venom stuff, so.
Yeah, no, I agree. Null seems like a character that I'm okay with not remembering after a while. It's just one of those characters for me. That's kind of how I'm at right now with like Batman Who Laughs. I'm like, I'm okay if he doesn't show up again for the next 6 years.
See, all that stuff, there's so much. I'm so out of that. That's another thing. Like, where do I start? Like, someday I might get them at sales and figure it out, but there's so much. And they're just one-shots and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's even confusing for people that are in comics.
Yeah.
It with really all the volumes and stuff. Like, my wife, she'll help pull books for me when we go to sales or anything. And sometimes I have to write, like, little notes, like when it came out or if it's a newer, older book.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I need the notes too sometimes. I mean, there's 8 volumes of Avengers, I think, now. Yeah,
there's and, like, so many relaunches that at some point you just give up. You're like, okay, I'm never going to get all these. There's no way. There's just too many.
Yeah, and then there's legacy numbers and stuff. It's like,
yeah. Thankfully, we have that collector's app now. That helps a whole lot.
I've been organizing for a long time, but
yeah. Well, Brett, I just want to thank you for being on. Thank you for coming on, just chit chatting with me about comics, talking about your favorite stuff.
No, anytime.
For the podcast, you can find us on Twitter at Comics Matter Pod. Or sorry, yeah. No, it's Comics Matter Pod. I don't know why I wrote down the wrong handle on here. Facebook at facebook.com/comicbooksmatter. You can email me at comicbooksmatter@gmail.com. And if you have any questions for guests, stories about how comics matter to you, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can reach me at all of those. And don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platforms and tell a friend if you like the show. The logo is done by my friend Steven. The theme is Join a Restaurant by David Szesztay. And remember, everybody, be good to one another.